The Democrats have been defeated. Biden says he is profoundly disappointed after Senate Dems, Manchin, and Sinema joined Republicans in killing off his voting rights bill by voting 52-48 to keep the filibuster. I'm really frustrated. I'm really angry. And I'm going to refrain from raising my voice, at least for now, and maybe it will escalate. Voting rights. Oh, I love that scumbaggery from these duplicitous, disgusting people. You see, I'm trying to refrain from escalating, raising my voice. There's no voting rights bill. There is just erosion of the system. It is just stripping and gutting it for power because these pieces of trash like Schumer, Biden, Pelosi, the establishment Democrats seek to extract as much value from the system as they burn it to the ground and feed your children into the grinder. The level of disdain that I have for this people cannot be expressed in words. We would need to create a new word so that you could understand the disgust I feel towards these people. You look in the media. What do they say? The Democrats' voting rights bill. Voting rights. No, what we have here is the Democrats desperate to change the rules because they're losing. You know what's funny about all this? Michael Malice posted this video clip of Chuck Schumer. You know, he's a Democrat guy. And he's talking about, this is a while ago, I think it was like 10 years ago, that the Republicans want to change the rules midstream to turn this country into a banana republic. Yeah, they did. Yeah, because Republicans are also trash. There's going to be revolutionary change in this country, one way or another. I hope everything remains peaceful. I hope it's just through reforms that these changes come about. But I feel like we are on the verge of a mass implosion. There is no way to rectify what this country is experiencing. And it is, to a certain degree, the internet's fault. Or maybe it is a benefit to us that the internet has allowed us to speak up and challenge these systems. You see, it's really easy to maintain a system when control of a message or information is restricted to a small few. 50 years ago. Not even 50 years ago, I mean even 30 years ago. Almost all information was going through a small handful of channels. And so it was very easy to make sure that everybody was falling in line with the narrative. You'd often get Republicans saying, I object to this change. And then 4 years later, the Democrats going, I object to this change, and just saying the exact opposite of each other. But you know, when the media controlled the narrative, it was easy to keep people hypnotized. Now it's really easy for communities to form, to share ideas, to maintain their values in the face of a shifting mass mainstream. So the other day, we were talking with Jason Miller, the CEO of Getter, and he was talking about his rules in free speech, and we discussed an individual by the name of Nick Fuentes who had been banned from Getter. And it's funny because I'm reading the story about Biden and the filibuster, and it all really does come together. Seeing the past, seeing the fracturing, seeing the chaos, seeing the anger. We're tired of the rules being make-believe. We just want to know what we are and aren't supposed to do. So we can say, okay, when it comes to what you expect, we can function properly and we know what to expect. People want some kind of stability. And so we're talking with the guy from Getter. And he said that, Nick Fuentes was banned because he was recruiting grapers and whatever. You know, some people, I've seen the comments, they're like, Tim certainly must know who Nick Fuentes. I know who he is. I don't know much about his political positions. I don't watch his content. I just don't know. And the media and, the ADL and a bunch of other organizations have accused him of the worst things. And the problem is I don't trust the media. That's not, so I'm not going to sit here and defend the guy in terms of his opinions or anything because I don't know what his opinions are. I don't watch his content. But I do know the media lies, and I do know that I'm sick and tired of believing they're garbage. But let me get to the point why I bring him up. When the media was controlled, stories like this, the filibuster, Democrats, and voting rights, it would fly. It would fly. It would fly. Everybody would believe it. They'd repeat it, and to a certain degree, they still do. The moral foundations of the United States would change rapidly when the establishment powers decided they should change. So what happens is you get a corporate mandate. You have 3 channels, right? And they all basically say, war good. War is really good. And then along comes a guy who's like, I think war is bad. You know what they do? We're not going to have you on the show. Sorry. We don't want people to hear your thoughts. And so this individual who challenges the war would then have to go out with a sign and stand in a university, park or something and hold the sign and yell. And some of these people could gain influence. But the gatekeepers of the establishment press would just keep out any dissenting voice. And thus, if there was a collective decision or a rapid moral change, the system decides some moral issue is now not allowed, then all of a sudden the establishment press stops promoting it, and the narrative immediately becomes, okay, we've decided that X is bad. No longer host or prop up anybody who believes X. And then the United States changes. There are many things from say, 100 years ago that no one in this country would do. Offensive jokes or statements or behaviors. Unless, of course, they're joking about the behavior, like ironically. But for the most part, society shifts. When the people who have a certain moral idea are excised from society because they can no longer participate or speak out, those ideas go with them. Which brings me to the Getter. The Getter CEO was saying that, they ban hate speech. You're not allowed to be hateful. And I'm like, you have the same rules as Twitter. And the CEO is like, but you can talk about vaccines. And I'm like, okay, that is good, I guess. You can talk about science. But it just sounds like it's only a matter of time before you do the same thing that Twitter did. And so I bring this up in this context because what we're seeing now is on the Daily Mail and a bunch of other sites. Let me pull this one up. CNBC. Senate Republicans block voting rights bills. Join with 2 Democrats to prevent filibuster change. I started thinking about phrasing, media manipulation, especially in the context of the discussion we had last night. If Getter is supposed to be this free speech alternative to Twitter, but they have the exact same rules as Twitter, except no editorializing. I'm like, we're watching the establishment try to drag people away from certain moral ideas by force. And it's interesting. I can't speak for Fuentes. I don't. Again, like I know I'm familiar with who he is. I know he's been banned and censored. Don't watch his stuff. So I don't. Some people have said that he's just a America First nationalist. The left accuses him of being alt-right or whatever. I don't believe the left, and I don't believe the media. So I just I don't know. But I can see when America First groups, MAGA, Trump supporting groups, come out and say we want America First. They get smeared in the media. They get accused of being alt-right. I mean, people trying to accuse me of being far-right and stuff, they can't really get to the alt-right thing because it's stupid and makes no sense. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to excise people of certain moral beliefs. So nationalism, they are trying to excise from the system. The reason why I bring this up just is because I'm reading the news about what the Democrats are trying to do, and they call it a voting rights bill. And this is exactly my point. When the establishment narrative says, we've decided this phrase is positive and this phrase is negative, that's when you get forced moral shifting in this country. Now, maybe it's a good thing, I don't know, in the long term, philosophically, that we excise bad ideas, or maybe it's just individuals who think their morals are better than someone else's, but we know where that leads to throughout history. Any one group getting a monopoly on morality, it typically leads to authoritarianism. And so there needs to be a debate and a diversity of opinions. This is what the game is. What the Democrats are proposing is not a voting rights bill. It is voting security excision. They are removing security from the electoral process. They are dramatically expanding the insecurities, and they say it's a voting rights bill, which is complete BS, because 2020 was the freest and fairest election we've ever had. The most secure, they said. Really? And so now their goal is to strip away that security. It's all about narrative. And this is why, let me show you this video. I keep saying this is why, I want to talk about Getter. What it is, people are just tired of being lied to. And because of the lies and the manipulations, the system is going to be gutted. Senate Republican Communications Center, January 10th. Senator Schumer once said nuking the filibuster would, quote, turn what the founding fathers called the cooling saucer of democracy into the rubber stamp of dictatorship. Make this country into a banana republic, a doomsday for democracy. Now he wants to trigger that doomsday himself. Yes, I think this is around 10 years ago. Schumer wanted the filibuster. Okay. The filibuster is basically a way for people to force a stoppage in the congressional process. And it makes sense. For often the rule has been in the past that you can talk as long as you want. And so there's been people who have talked for like 12 hours straight, crazy, so that there was no time to hold the vote and the session would end and then it would be done. I guess what happened is the Democrats and the Republicans were like, okay, well, that's dumb because then people just waste time. How about we just say you need 60 votes? Makes sense, right? I think it's a good thing. If there's a 50-50 Senate, neither side should just be deciding what the rules are. There should be a supermajority. Chuck Schumer, he says this. Michael Malice tweets, when I am weaker than you, I ask you for freedom because that is according to your principles. When I am stronger than you, I take away your freedom because that is according to my principles. Quote from Frank Herbert. Malice says, let's also leave aside the insanity that having a 50-50 Senate means you have a mandate for complete legislative control. Before the internet, regular people would see this, and that would be the only thing fresh in their minds. But now with the internet, we can actually see the lies and the manipulation of these evil pieces of human waste. Chuck Schumer, vote him out, primary him, get rid of the guy. He should not be in Congress. He should be retiring peacefully, sitting in his little wheelchair in his sunroom with a smile on his face, drinking his martini. Congratulations, you lived a life. Now we want you to just go away. We can see the lies. We can see the manipulations. And we can see the attempts at controlling the narrative. And it's not working. So stop. They don't do it. They're too stupid. Well, I tell you this, man, I am really excited for the next 10 years. You know why? I'm 35. I'm going to be 36 in 2 months. Woof, can you believe it? Wow. In terms of average life expectancy, my life is half over. It's crazy, huh? But in the next 10 years, people in our age group who are familiar with the internet, who are sick of the manipulations, will be aging into the workforce. Gen Z will be doing the same thing. I'm optimistic that these scumbags are going to get kicked right out. Now, of course, you'll still end up with other progressive manipulative scumbags. And so, sure, it's not all good. But I kind of feel like with the internet and those born of the internet, raised by it or through it, there's going to be a difference in the scumbaggery. It's not going to be all good, but there's going to be harder conversations about how we solve these problems, how we move forward. And suffice it to say, I believe revolutionary change is coming to this country. I don't know what it'll look like. The left claims it will be fascism. Blech. What? American nationalism? I don't know, whatever. The right thinks it'll be communism. Yeah, sounds awful. I don't know. One of the two, maybe, but probably not fascism, to be completely honest. I think it's possible there could be authoritarianism in general, but I view that as more coming from the left. Certainly, you have really awful people in the Republican Party, but for the most part, what are they doing, right? Right now, you've got websites like Gab. You do have, Getter for all of their faults that we brought up, and you had, I think Parler still exists, but geez, talk about this weird landscape of, alternate digital ecosystems. These platforms are allowing communities to persist. So here's what happens. In the 1950s, there are people who are racist. And the media and the establishment decide they're not going to support that. They're going to start moving towards civil rights. Of course, there is a resistance to this. But because the media is homogenized, eventually it just becomes, this is the moral standard we abide by. That's what they're doing now with terms of service. And they're trying to do it through the Google Play Store. In my opinion, the reason Getter bans Nick Fuentes and the reason Getter has the same rules as Twitter, except for like editorialization, is that Google Play and the Apple Store require it. And if you want to get access to those platforms where people download apps, you got to play ball. Thus, we have a centralized hub of power determining what morals should be. In the past, you had no recourse. Sure, you could have your little group meetings, but eventually your ideas die off. Today, Getter, Gab, Parler, Minds, whatever, exist. And so these groups of dissident moral opinion, even really awful ones, have a space to coordinate and recruit and grow. And that's fascinating. That's what Jason Miller said to us. He said he didn't want Getter to be the OkCupid for white nationalism, which I just felt like his responses were all just, if you saw the episode, you saw what I said, BS. I certainly think Getter is still good, a positive, if you're basically cloning Twitter, but saying, we're going to allow you to praise Donald Trump. It's like, all right, it's better than nothing. At least there's some contrast in the moral mandate from, these despots. But with Gab existing and people being able to use these platforms and communicate and grow, you're not going to be able to excise these opinions. And thus, there will not be a moral homogenization. This country will not, it's not going to shift the way it has in the past. But if there are still factions that try to homogenize morality, it'll just pull different groups apart. The media, calling it voting rights, sounds to me like the moral imperative from these organizations is, to put it simply, to erode and destroy voting, our electoral systems in this country. Republicans are involved in it the same as Democrats. If it weren't for the internet, we wouldn't know about it. You would just see the news that the Republicans are so evil and they're trying to do away with voting rights. And of course, Republicans are just effectively the roadblock for Democrats as they destroy everything and burn this country to the ground. As both parties are in favor of opening our borders, except for the America First nationalist type Republicans, they're both in favor of destroying the borders. They're both in favor of non-citizens voting. Now, I know there are some Republicans who are like, we shouldn't allow this, but we will absolutely do nothing to stop it. And the Democrats are completely in favor of non-citizens voting. So if you wait 20 years and go down this path, what happens? The country gets ripped to shreds. People who aren't citizens come in and vote to strip away the rights of the people who do live here, and the United States crumbles. So people tell me I'm pessimistic for bringing that up. What do you think? You think that a voting rights bill is not going to result in that? Look, they lost. The Democrats lost. Why? Because the internet is allowing the current status quo and certain moral groups to retain their power. And I don't mean racists. I mean, you've got the Democratic Party and wokeism. And the woke want to destroy this country and burn it to the ground. They say it all the time. They say it's an evil white supremacist country. You then have, further right individuals, ultra-nationalists, ultra-traditionalists, a little out there. But then you also just have kind of like America First conservative types who are like, why wouldn't we support America? There's a powerful interest, a powerful push towards gutting and eroding the United States. We've heard it from powerful elites. They want internationalization. I suppose you call it. Alex Jones refers somewhat to similarly to globalism, but what they do want streamlined one world control. I'm not saying it's a grand conspiracy. I don't think there's an evil cabal of 12 people or an Illuminati family going, yeah. I do think that birds of a feather flock together and that wealthy individuals are sitting there and that it's really simple. Bill Gates goes, we want to be able to sell IBM computers for free in China. And then someone from China says, we can make a lot of money if you do that. So they work out these trade agreements, but then they say, hold on, there's a problem. We can't send our factories from the US over to China because the law's in the US, so they need to lobby to erode them. I just think for the most part, it's dominoes being knocked over. It's the direction that many of these people want to go. I personally don't have a problem with one world government within reason. What I mean by that is the United States needs to retain its sovereignty, have its rules and laws, its rights protected. But what I mean by globalism is like an international court system for resolving issues as it pertains to trade and conflict, war. We don't want war. So how about, a world court says when there's a dispute over borders or resources, it results in a lawsuit. Hey, that'd be way better than war. War sucks. But the United States is the United States. And I think the best system we can have is international cooperation, but sovereignty of the nation. That means that people can choose to live in whatever area they think best suits them. Instead, we have these crackpots who want to just rip it all apart and just be like, everyone should be the same. And that's an authoritarian dystopian nightmare for a one world government. No, we don't want that. We can talk on the phone with our friends in Europe. We can sell goods, with certain restrictions between nations, but we need to protect the resources and rights of the individuals in the communities for which they live. Because of the internet, we're able to retain the values of nationalism. I don't mean ultranationalism. I don't mean far right. I just mean, hey, America's not bad. America's pretty good. Constitution, I dig it. That's it. We don't want our borders eroded. We don't want this country destroyed. But I'll tell you this, Democrats do, and Republicans are more than happy to sit back and watch as it happens. It's because of the internet that we can challenge this. It's because of even YouTube, as bad as it's getting, that I can tell you the Democrats are not pushing for voting rights. That's a lie. They're lying to you. I don't care about, for the most part, policy stuff. I care about whether or not they're being honest. But what we get from the media, what we get from Democrats is lies and manipulation. And what we get from Getter when it comes to people like Fuentes, in my opinion, is the same garbage. I do not believe they had any legitimate reason for banning Nick Fuentes other than he's persona non grata. I know he's been banned from a lot of places, and thus Getter just said, meh, nuke him. Well, I don't want to live in a world where someone who didn't break the rules is banned simply because you don't like who they are and they have bad opinions. I won't speak to Fuentes because I don't know his opinions. But I will tell you, the alt-right are awful. They have garbage opinions. I think they're trash. I would vote against them. I would advocate against them. And I want to make sure everybody understands. But let me just explain. In the modern era of the internet, you do not win the moral argument by lying, cheating, and stealing because people can go to any other platform and have communication with others who are like-minded and say to themselves, here's proof this person is lying, cheating, and stealing. Now, if I can show what they say and be honest about it and make a good moral argument, I will win. But the morons and the evil crackpot pieces of garbage like Chuck Schumer are too stupid. I can't stand any of these establishment shill pieces of trash. I'll leave it there, man. You get the point. They try to change the narrative so they can strip your rights from you and gain power. Don't let them. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out. I'll see you all then.